Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sonictalk episode 700. Good grief, 700 episodes. That is an epic milestone. It's not as big as 1,000, but that would be another 6 years away. Anyway, this is the Music Technology Podcast, where we talk about all things to do with music production, software, hardware, synthesizers, recording, studio performance, all of that kind of stuff. I want to say thank you to our friends over at iZotope, who will be telling you a little bit about their subscription service later on, and also to Yuhi, their Metaphorium patches. We've got a little message from them later. Then thanks for their supporting the show. Also want to say hello to our friends over at YouTube chat and the IRC chat. And the combination chat, which is what I'm watching now, which is YouTube, IRC, Twitch, and Facebook, because we stream that live everywhere where we can. Also want to say, in case you're interested, please do join us on Patreon. Patreon, of course, is where we post all our stuff ad-free. Also get a bit of pre-show for the Sonic Talk. And we've been posting samples and sound packs and all kinds of stuff that related to the things that we do with reviews. So if you want to support us there, please feel free to carry on and just go on. In fact, if you do, you join the later tier. There's only 2 tiers. It's not a bunch of cash. But if you get it in before the end of the show, at the end, the upper tiers get a name check at the end. Ditto, if you're interested in joining us for super chats or super stickers. I'm being very commercially crass today. You've got maybe a plug for an event you've got, just put it in there. That's great. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's get on to our guests. I mean, 700 episodes is a lot, but Dave, I've caught you catching coffee. And you were there, Dave Spiers of GForce Software. You were there at episode 1 when it was just audio.
Just amazing, eh? Amazing. Actually, not amazing, because it is a really good show, and it's definitely matured over the years. Yeah, it was
astonishing. It's lasted so long.
Yeah. No, I remember when you called me and just kind of went, well, do you fancy doing something midweek? Might have legs, might not. Who knows? Let's try it. I was like, yeah, and hey, here we are. Wow, amazing. Well done.
Yeah, well, a few facts and figures. Actually, the 700 episodes, if you listen to them end to end, it would be 29 days continuous listening. There's also over 1 million viewer hours on all the ones I could find on YouTube. So that equates to 114 man years. So if you added all the time up, it would be 140, which is pretty. That's over a century of listening time or watching time or whatever it may be. It's bonkers, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Anyway, how are you, Dave? Are you well?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes. Yeah, recovering.
Good. Well, you've got we'll talk about this a little bit later. You've got the M-Tron Mark II out, which is literally fresh off the press. The ink's still dry on the GUI, right? Still wet, even, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, don't touch it.
Don't touch it. And we also have, really pleased to have, Tori Letzler from LA, who's there in her studio. She very kindly got up early. I mean, we're talking super early. It's only just 8 a.m. So, but you've got a load of press and stuff for this week. So I guess you're having to kind of get in training for this kind of thing. How have you been? It's been ages.
I've been good. Yeah, it's been a while. I think I may have spoken to you right when I moved into the studio, but I honestly don't remember because it's been a minute. The way the world has shifted, I've not been a morning person for the past year or so. But it's been good. Lots of, projects, busy. But I'm glad to be back on episode 700. And I think the last episode I was on, I was also talking with Dave, and he had something come out on the last episode I was on.
Wow! Totally. So you two been working behind the scenes to kind of to work this out. That's funny.
Yeah,
that'll be nearly a year ago.
Is that Is that the last time?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Wow, I'm sorry.
That sounds about right. So, Tori, I mean, lockdown. Have you been busy? Because I know at the beginning of lockdown, there was kind of, nobody was really sure what was going. But you've just done a sort of a full year since then. Have you been kind of on it? Because I don't know. Has production been going on? Have you been able to be doing? Because you do media composer and you do kind of releases. Is it Tiny Cat, your project?
Yeah, it's Tiny Cat. Yeah, actually, I have a release with Tiny Cat coming out on Friday. It's a collab with an artist or a duo called Slumberjack, and I'm really excited about that release. If you like, heavier bass and trap. It's got some orchestral elements. It's a cool release. But the big thing I have is my Netflix show that I scored over the pandemic is coming out on Friday. And so is the soundtrack. And that show I worked on for almost a year. So it's been a long time. It's called In From the Cold. And it's heavily... Huh?
Were you singing? Were you? I mean, how much? What did you have to put into that? Was it? How would you describe it musically?
Musically, it is a heavily analog score inspired by like 90s industrial. I took a lot of inspiration from like How to Destroy Angels, and there's a lot of vocals in it. A lot of really affected vocals. I keep telling people it was like a masterclass for myself in vocal processing. So I think if you're into those two things and you like spy thrillers, because that's what it is, it's a fun show.
Oh, excellent. Well, it's fantastic to have you, and I'm much appreciative of you getting up early to get down here. I'm sure you've got other stuff to do, though. I'm sure you're exaggerating in the fact that you haven't been up this early for a year. I can't believe that for a second. And of course we have Mr. Yoad Nevo there in Nevo Sound in London. Yoad, where he masters, he's at the controls of the heart of the bass, mixing. He's also a Waves developer. How are you, Yoad? It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. It's been not too long. It's I think I've been on 2 weeks ago, maybe 3.
Oh,
yeah, I think I joined around episode 400 or something like that. So it's been a couple of hundreds of episodes as well.
6 years. That's 6 years. God, that's 300 episodes.
Something like that. 5-6 years. Yeah. So yeah, everything is good. Everything is well. I'm still very busy here, which is good because it's really cold outside in central London. And
I can't help but notice that you've got a fader port there. Is that a new addition? That little controller?
It's a new addition. Between this and the knob, which I never remember what it's called. Knob or big knob or something. Not big knob. Knob. NOB.
Yeah, I remember that's the controller. Yeah.
So this allows you to hover above any parameter you see on the screen and tweak it. So it's really nice. It's basically it's like a big scroll wheel, which is really nice. And then this allows me, but because I work in touch mode, it's not very, sometimes it's a bit glitchy. So this is for more like touch, for automating sends and stuff like that.
Right.
But also,
it's so funny. So but yet to the right of it, you've got all of those other faders. Are they moving faders on your console as well, or
they're moving? They are on this side. They're moving faders. On this side, they aren't. But even the ones that are moving faders are not moving very much lately. So because the way I use it is it's for summing, and when I use the mic preamps and EQ and compressor on every channel, which is great, but I use it from the insert send, so I don't really. And the insert returns are for summing, so the desk is pretty much static anyway.
Yeah,
so,
it's like summing. Yeah, it's just interesting that you've gone for the fader. I mean, I've got one of those. I didn't go for that one. I've got the Platform Nano, which is a similar concept, which I use for just automating dialogue in video editing. So it's just a quick way to grab a fader and just kind of automate some of the moves.
I have to say that the other functionality I use it for is because the whole studio is SoundGrid. So all the computers are connected through SoundGrid, which is a digital network, audio network system. And when I work in Atmos, which is 12 speakers, I use that to control 12 speakers at the same time through
the master
sound
volume.
Master volume,
were.
yeah. So that's
Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, we have news this week. There are things going on. I think I can just go, if I press this button here, I think it should happen, and then come to here. Roland, 50 years. They've started their 50 years of Rolandness, I guess. So that'd be 1972, I suppose they would have started. Really, I mean, sadly there was no video. I was hoping to play some kind of fancy corporate video that would give it a bit of pizzazz, but we can't do that. But 50 years, so what they've done is they've just gone through the era, so you can the 1970s. There's some classics here, aren't there? I mean, there's just so much stuff, and it's really interesting to forget. Sometimes you forget all this legacy, and I know Roland they're one of the companies that get a lot of flack for not doing the old stuff anymore, which it's really weird. But when you look back, you can understand why people are perhaps so sort of evangelical about their stuff, because there's something in sort of almost every generation that's been a really iconic piece of equipment. I suppose one thing I just wanted to say was sort of happy birthday to Roland, and a kind of maybe a celebration. I know, Tori, have you got any favourite Roland eras or pieces of equipment, because it is quite an achievement?
The Jupiter and the Juno, obviously.
Right. Okay.
It's not in this studio, but in my husband's studio, he's got the new Jupiter, like is it the Jupiter XM or that thing?
The big one or the little one?
He's got the little one, so I think it's the
XM. Yeah.
Yeah,
XM,
I've played with
yeah.
that thing a bunch, and I love that. And also, I love their little boutique modules, which they discontinued some of them. I think those are absolutely great. And I had, what was it, like the SH-101, there was a Juno one, there was a Jupiter one, and something else. At some point, I had like 4 or 5 of them. We've offloaded some of them at this point, but I think they're great value for the size and what they do. And yeah, they harken back to the classic era of Roland. So I'm definitely a fan of...
it's very interesting, actually, because when the boutiques first came out, it was so going against the flow of everybody kind of making all this other analog remakes and sort of genuine analog. But now the ranges continue to expand. I just reviewed the JD08 and I've got the JX08, which will be next. And they've injected a bit more DSP in them, because some of the early ones were like, the JP08 had only 4 voices, whereas the JD08 has 128 and the JX08 has 8. So it has more, I think, and it's got a split. So they're starting to kind of beef them up a bit, and they're starting to make more sense. And I found personally that I was sort of more open to the whole concept of boutiqueness than perhaps I was at the beginning when they were sort of against the zeitgeist. It's quite interesting how that goes. It's I don't know why that would be the case, but yeah. But of course, the thing about the Roland, there was a massive change, wasn't there? Dave, remember it was 2014. I think that the management that after Takahashi died, he retired, the management bought out and they kind of restructured the company. It's actually quite a big deal, and that's changed a lot. Things have changed. With a company the size of Roland, it takes a long time for things to change, but it feels like there's a lot of movement, or has been corporately.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. Obviously, I was aware of it when it happened. I'm a proper old school Roland fan. First synth I ever played on a gig was an SH-1000. That was a bit crazy because it was in this kind of weird sort of proggy Santana-like band, and they just wanted something that sounded like Keith Emerson, bearing in mind this was the 70s. And then I rented a SH-1000 from Anderson's in Guildford, lugged it up on the train, set it up, got a fairly average sound out of it. And then there was the little screwdriver port in the back for tuning it, and some smart ass came in and just moved it before the gig, and it was like whoa! All of a sudden during the gig everything was out. But I haven't got an SH-1000. I would really like one, purely because obviously it was the first synth that I ever really properly played it on a gig at, but also because I found out that the Imagination bass lines were done on it. And it makes sense when you know that there's that push button for the portamento, a bit like the 2600. All of a sudden, it's like, okay. And they just put it through a Boss chorus and stuff. So I've always kind of thought, Alex Ball's got one. I'm tempted to nick his if I go down and see him at some point. But honestly, I mean, there was a point where I was going to go and work for Roland. They were only over in Fleet, which was kind of 40 minutes from me. It was in the 90s. JD800 is still one of my main master keyboards. The tracking on that is just lightning fast. And I'd got, in fact, the MD of Roland UK, a guy called Brian Nunney at the time, was very influential in when I started the first ever software company in the early 90s. And we did a lot of bundle stuff with them, and he was massive help, kind of bankrolled us, really. And at one point, he just said, our tech support guy is leaving. Do you want to come and work? And I was like, yeah. Because honestly, at that point, if you cut me, I'd bleed Roland blood. And then, of course, they moved down to Cardiff. They had some big tax incentive to move everything down to Swansea. And I thought, no. And I was already committed to this company. But yeah, we got bags of it. I still, like I say, still use JD800, love it. I could never figure out, because there was always this kind of MIDI lag with things like the D50, which is obviously an iconic instrument, the D70 around that era. And then all of a sudden when the JD800 hit, it was just like lightning fast to play. And I'm not a super speedy keyboard player. But it just felt right. It was the perfect synth action keyboard for me. And then I went to a big Roland Microsoft developers conference in Seattle years ago. And a load of the engineers were there. And he said it was one of the engineers told me it was the first time where they had a kind of dedicated keyboard scanning chip.
That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Makes a lot of sense, because when you look back to Prophet 5 was the first one with an actual microprocessor in it, and that must have been laggy as hell, I'd imagine, because what the clock rate would have been barely fractions of a second at that one. I am exaggerating, obviously, but yeah. So interesting. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. But I wonder if they developed, because Roland developed a lot of their own house chips. I wonder if their keyboard scanning technology was in-house, or whether they'd got it from an external clock. Oh, this is very nerdy. I do apologise if it's perhaps too nerdy.
I mean, they've made so many iconic instruments. I love things like, SH2, still use, still love. VP330, very seminal part of the kind of underworld 90s sound. The 550 string ensemble, I think the ensemble on that is just stunning. I even played the JP-8000 the other day. And was kind of like, I can... There's
a lot of love for the JP-8000 as the next boutique, although there were a lot of controls on that, and the problem is the boutique, it just feels it's a wee bit small, even though I must admit the JD-08 that I reviewed, I didn't find that to be so much of an issue. I was surprising. I found it less of an issue than I did with the JP-08, which is kind of a weird... yeah.
So I kind of didn't take any real notice, because I've been busy. And somebody sent me a picture of it, and I thought it was like one of those kind of, I hate to say this, I thought it was kind of like one of those joke Photoshop things that people do. Because I was like, what have they done? Anyway, I thought it was hilarious, and then eventually I realised, okay, yeah, I should shut up because this is real. But yeah, I'm very tempted. I was very tempted with the D50 boutique, because, D50, the keyboard's a bit rank, and it's like, wow, that would save
the D50, the D05 was actually, or whatever it was called. I can't remember what they called the boutique. Yeah, it was snappier. I know, Yoad, I know you've got some Roland kit there, but everybody's got a kind of sort. If I just have a quick look at I've got a new shot which I can throw at the chat. The chat is full of people all sort of saying, oh yeah, I had there we go, Rick Max Speed, Jupiter 8 and MKS 70. People saying what their gear was, what their first introduction to Roland. You must. Where did you start with Roland? What was your first ever Roland, assuming there was one?
The Juno one, the Juno 60, Juno 60. But yeah, just before the show, I went and counted how many. So I have 9 Roland analog synths and a few digital ones, which is probably because I was thinking, what do I like more, Roland or Korg? And I really like Korg, and Poly 6 is one of my favorite synths ever. But apart from that, and the MS-10 and the Poly 800, which I love, I don't really have other Korg analog stuff, but I do have a lot of, like all the classic Roland stuff. And I just found this, I was looking at the shot you showed on the website, and this shows there as the first thing. Wow. And it actually, this is a Roland drum machine that was supposed to be mounted on an organ, and it's not even called Roland yet. It's called Donkomatic. And it sounds really good, but you see this bar here, you actually tap it to start and stop so it's like touch sensitive. And so I think that this was one of the first products before they were even called Roland. So that's quite Mini Pops 5. That's
I would
cool.
I would hang on to that one. That's going to be you'd probably sell it back to them for their museum.
And I do have the JD 800, which is amazing. But I was thinking, for me, the transition to digital, obviously the D50 was a big thing. And I have at the time when it came out, I didn't have enough money to buy it. So I bought the MT32, which was the poor people kind of LA synthesis sort of thing. And I had a program for the Atari to edit it, because when you switched it off, it didn't have any memory and things like that. You had to program it, and I learned how to program in Sysex and wrote like a few lines to change the reverb and stuff like that. But other than that, and the JD, and I do have the JP 8000. But I think that if you think about Roland and Korg, I think that Korg made the transition to digital in a slightly better way, because there are some modern things like the new FM. I don't remember what it's called, and the wave station thing, the new one. All these Wave State and the Minilog. Well, that's analog, but I feel that they're a little bit more current, and all the boutique stuff that Roland put out recently, it's all kind of remakes of old gear, some analog and some digital, like the JD08 and the JP08 and all that. So I think that up until 95 or whenever it was that the JD 800 came out, I think that they were really up there. And then maybe they didn't. I'm not talking about all the wave stations and all that the Phantom and all those, which I don't know very well. But I'm talking about like the pro gear and the proper synths and stuff. The JD 800 is definitely up there. But you have all those 70s and 80s analog synths, which are amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, the price of Jupiter 8s is insane.
Not to mention the 808 and 909 and 303.
I mean, it's when you start looking at all of that stuff, it's bonkers, isn't it? Tori, do you ever? It's interesting. I don't know whether you ever compose. It's like almost an inventory, not an inventory, but like you do a stock take of how many. When you're composing, when you're creating, do you have like an idea of what the share of the sound sources are in terms of manufacturing? Because I know you build a lot of your own stuff in modular as well, and you create sort of sound libraries and palettes that way. But I mean, do you reach for some of these sort of much more pre-formatted and pre-made synths, or are you kind of using that in software? Because I mean, media composition is a nightmare without recall. I guess you have to use software where you can.
You know what? Yes and no. I mean, so I've strayed away from keyboard synths recently, I've been using mostly the Eurorack, or actually in the box. I use a company called Slade and Ash a ton, and they've done a really good job of capturing analog. So I've been using them a bunch. But, usually if I'm using synths, what you said about the recall, like for the show I just finished, I did like these massive analog recording sessions. So I'm recording, 2-3 hours of sound at a time, giving it to the assistant to chop up sections and then basically make myself my own in-house sample library.
Right.
And then I pull from that for the palette of the show. I know some people really like, using the synths directly over a cue, and that's one way of working. For me, it just takes too much time. I'm not that quick. So I need to figure out the sounds in advance and take some time and just do a massive sampling session and then usually add them in. That being said, the keyboard that I use the most right now, surprisingly, is actually, what is it? It's the Korg Monologue. It's just right behind this. That's why I was checking.
Yeah, good shout.
It's such a tiny little, nothing synth, but it's just great and it's so easy. Also the Moog Sub 37. I don't have anything Roland right now in this studio. Steve has some, and oftentimes we'll trade back and forth, and I'll grab gear from him. But I've just been mostly using the Eurorack as of late.
That's an interesting idea, actually. So it makes sense really, because when you're you can get into the right kind of headspace and make a whole bunch of sounds in the area of sonics that you're considering for the show, because otherwise you kind of do it. It'd be easy to do piecemeal. You start with the theme and then you kind of you stop. That's actually quite an interesting approach. Makes a lot of sense.
I like working with audio, especially over the last 2 years and diving more into the producer side. I think having audio before, I was 100% a MIDI person, but being able to have audio just to toss into your session, it can be really, really easy. And it was super nice to develop the sound of the show that way, because I just had this bundle of sounds that only belonged to me and was specifically related to this project. And then I found myself reusing similar things over and over and over again in the score that have a really gritty edge to it, but, wasn't taking me 2 extra hours to, record into the cue. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, happy birthday, Roland. I mean, I hope they're obviously doing something right. They've got 50 years down the line, and, we want to wish them well and hope they stick around for a lot longer, because it's always good to have someone with such a heritage and an understanding of how to make instruments, even if they might be out of step sometimes with the more vociferous of their critics. They're just going to carry on doing their own thing. Okay, we've got another, it's probably time I have a little word from our friends over at Yuhi. So please do enjoy Metaphorium information. This is Yuhi Metaphorium, a 220 plus strong sound bank for Hive 2.1 that has been custom crafted over a period of 2 years by Howard Scar, Victor Weimer, and also Urs Heckman himself. The bank was originally commissioned as a custom set for composer Johnny Kilmeck for the projects he had coming up, including a secret film. That film turned out to be The Matrix Resurrections. As Urs Heckman was one of the patch designers, features were added to Hive 2.1 to allow the creation of the new bank. Pretty cool. The soundbank is available via yuhi.com, priced at €39. Use the URL bit.ly/talkmeta. And as I said, I did shoot an interview with Urs Heckman, Howard Scar, and Victor Weimer, the 3 sound designers behind that. That should be coming up soon. I'm just waiting for the final render of that. But that's kind of, we talked an hour. It was really fascinating. Okay, we're going to get into. There's a new synth, and this was trailed a little time ago, and now it's actually here. Who's excited? Let's go. This is the new CT-S1000V. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful, and it's an interesting one because they've trailed it and teased it. But what's fascinating about this is the way that it's got this kind of Votalk type type your sounds, type your vocals into an app on a smartphone, and then send it in, and then it will actually play through them in a way, either sequentially or on phrases. And it's kind of slightly left field, I must admit. And it's also got a bunch of usable sounds, pianos and whatnot, which may be a bit kind of people would sneer at a little bit because it's Casio, but actually some of the sounds are pretty decent. But I just think this is a sort of fascinating concept. I mean, really, when again you look at Casio, big legacy of synthesizers, and you look at this, and you think this is a toy, and maybe some people think about this new AIX vocal engine is actually quite interesting. I don't know. I mean, you're a singer, you're not going to need this, but I mean, some of the sonic capabilities. I mean, I think there's something like 80 different vocal sounds in here, and just it looks like some fun. Have you had a chance to check any of the videos, Tori?
When you mentioned it to me, I went and checked it out because I don't remember the last time I've looked at anything Casio. And to be fair, I have borrowed really old, quote unquote, toy Casios and recorded them for scores just because they have such a unique sound. And I like stuff that sounds like old and dinky. But I think it's kind of cool. And, you mentioned that I'm a vocalist and I wouldn't use vocal samples. That's not true at all. In fact, I love using weird samplers and things that just don't sound like me because, I use myself all the time. I don't know if this is something that I would put in my arsenal, but I think it's kind of cool. And it looks like something. I don't know what's the price point on it. Do you know?
It's $449. It's not actually, it's fair. I mean, it's listed at higher, but that's roughly what it's going to come out at. And that's,
so
that's not.
For me, I think that's a good entry level for a lot of, this seems like a good bedroom producer kind of synth, to be honest. And it seems like it's well within reach for a lot of people. And so it might not be something that I would gravitate towards, but it looks like a fun product, especially for somebody that might not be able to afford, something crazier.
Yeah. I think the vocal thing's quite interesting. I know, Dave, you're maybe there's something that you should have downstairs in the lounge for your good lady wife, who we know is a big. I don't know. She hasn't got a phobia of vocoders, but she's not fond of them, is she? Oh, she has, right.
No, she has a phobia. It's it all started with Sparky's Magic Piano. I don't know why that obviously affected her as a youngster, and now, in fact, it was quite funny because when you sent the links through, I had this video on my phone and I went down to make a coffee and she's just like, what is that? That's really upsetting me. So yeah, for that reason alone, I'd like to have one around the house just for fun. I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating. I think, in fact, Tori hit the nail on the head. I think some kind of bedroom muso is going to come out with some monster smash that is mega annoying, but it'll just catapult this sound into the psyche, into the consciousness of everybody. And you'll either love it or hate it. And I know it'll drive my wife around the bend.
Yeah, I probably are going to hear that. I know it's interesting though. I mean, I was, because I had a little preview sort of the technology before, and I was desperately trying to kind of find out what the real time performance aspect of it is, and it really isn't. You have to type the stuff in, but you do get phonetic. So if you wanted to give it an accent, you could actually get in there and you change the timing of each of the syllables. They could be triggered sequentially via notes. I mean, it's very complex, but also probably quite fiddly. It just seems strange that they didn't go for a real time vocoder. Yoad, I mean, I know you've worked on vocoders. There may be a reason for this. Why go this way rather than a live input? I'm still not quite sure, but it's got a uniqueness to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And I have to say, listening to or watching those demos, apart from the vocal thing, which, like you said, it looks like it's quite cumbersome to use, and it doesn't have any real-time aspect to it. The rest of the sounds, like if you treat it as a rompler, the piano sounded quite okay, but other than that, all the sounds, and especially what they used on the demos, I wasn't sure whether I was looking at the product from the 90s or what. Like, it's not retro enough. It just... You know what I mean? It doesn't have the retro appeal, yet it sounds and looks quite dated with the speakers. I guess I'm just not the target market for this, because I don't know if it's a pro kind of audio gear, like, so I don't know how I should treat it.
I think the thing that was interesting to me about it is the notion of, I mean, there are where I can see it maybe happening. If you need that sort of auto-tune kind of vibe, what you can do, it can store, I think there's 150 or so lyrics in it. So, and the way it can play, you could actually, so you're playing the chords, it could be used as part of an accompaniment, so backing vocals or layered harmonized vocals against the lead vocal if the keyboard player was playing that. And it is multi-timbral as well, so you know there are aspects, but it does feel like there are probably other ways to do it. But I guess if you didn't have...
There's so many pedals like Vocaloid and all those things that receive MIDI. So if you want to play the chords and generate kind of vocoder sounds in real time, there are other ways of doing it live, or if you use a laptop, not to mention, because then you have all these Sarah and Miriam and all those, by Yamaha and other makers who make these things that sound more professional. Yeah. So I don't really, for me, I was trying to think, because we talked about Roland, I was trying to think about the JV series, and these were proper like workhorse tools, you know what I mean? And this seems a little bit, so I maybe I just don't get and I'm sure there's a market for it, it's just not me.
No, I think you're right. Sorry, Tori, go.
No, I wanted to add on to what Yoad was saying. As someone who uses vocoders a ton, I typically don't and also I'm not using them live, so if I'm in the DAW, I'm using Vocal Synth, and that's pretty much the only vocoder I use. It's a fantastic plugin, and it does what I need easily. But, he was mentioning with Yamaha, one of the reasons I don't love keyboard vocoders, I had to, use the Montage, which is great, and they have their, the built-in vocoder. But when you have to play the chords and sing live, I feel like we've gone beyond that at this point, with pedals and all kinds of other stuff that can do vocoding live without having to accompany yourself playing the chords that you were singing. And I'm assuming that's what this is that you have to play the chords in order to get the vocoder to function. And it's just a pain in the ass for me. And so, again, I don't do a ton of live performance, but the few times I've had to do that, I really didn't like it. I would much rather pre-record myself and do layers live using a pre-recorded, vocal underneath, or use some sort of pedal or something that's going to be easier. Just the whole, I think we've passed beyond the keyboard vocoder thing, but that's just my opinion.
I think that's a fair point. It's interesting. I mean, I think I would like to try one out, and I know because I looked at some of the earlier generation stuff, the WP and the XG. I think they were the two synths that came out almost 10 years ago now, or certainly a bunch. And the sounds were certainly it is a budget approach to getting a whole load of sounds in your arsenal if you haven't got a computer and you don't want to splash out on a fully blown workstation. And there's a lot of stuff in there's a lot of auto accompaniment and styles. Ben Jordan did a fantastic video on it where he kind of really explores it, and it kind of made sense to a degree from his enthusiasm, but I think you're right, practically it's maybe not the most obvious way of working. Okay, well, Dave, I think the time has come to have a look at your latest baby. This is Dave. Dave comes on what is it? Once a year, and every time he does, he's got something to pimp, and this is what he's pimping this time.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's not. Hey, no, it's not that one either. It's this one.
In 2000, we launched the world's first Tron plugin, M-Tron. And it's fair to say that it took the world by storm, winning numerous awards and introducing those nostalgic tones to a new generation. This was superseded by M-Tron Pro, which again won numerous awards and became the benchmark by which all other Me Too melis were judged. While both M-Tron and M-Tron Pro were based on the 1970s single manual M400, for the true Tron aficionados, the holy grail is the insanely rare 1960s Mark II.
And that's what you did. So, Dave, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play the whole thing because the whole thing is, while it's great, people can see that elsewhere. So yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, you release something. So this came out yesterday, and it's what's the distinction between it? Because I think maybe so. Basically, it's a very it's the creme de la creme of the Mellotron hardware, right? Is that what is considered? How would you pitch it?
Yeah, I mean, so the original Mellotron. So obviously we know that it was originally the Chamberlain, which was brought over from America, and then kind of surreptitiously sold to the Bradley family, and that became the Mellotron. And there were only 100 and it's something like 130 Mark IIs. It started as the Mark I, then it got a few additions, and most of the Mark I's were upgraded to the Mark II, proper cycling chains for this station cycling and stuff. So there's only 130 of them around. They are, like I say, insanely rare. And when we were talking to the original Mellotron manufacturers in the UK, Streetly Electronics, in fact, it's weird. I found a photograph, and it was 9 years ago, almost to the day, that we went there, where the idea of doing a software Mark II was first discussed.
Wow, a lot of work gone into this, then, right?
It was nuts. I mean, the first thing that Martin did was send me through the Streetly guy sent me through the master tapes for the Mark I. And what's fascinating, I'm so nerdy about this. The Chamberlain rhythms and accompaniments were recorded. So it was a 2-manual thing, left-hand rhythms and accompaniments. There's that, and the right-hand leads. And there's that very famous kind of David Nixon and Eric Robinson, who was the band leader who recorded the UK Mellotron rhythms and accompaniments. But one thing I discovered through this is that, so the British Mellotron Mark II stuff was recorded at IBC Studios in the very early 60s with the Eric Robinson Orchestra. And I'd kind of gone into there, and Martin and I had spent, years on sort of reworking these sounds and tempo mapping stuff and just jigging stuff around. And what had happened is a band, it was a girl called Caro Emerald in Europe, had used a lot of these rhythms and motifs on a massive album. I think it was called Scenes from the Cutting Room Floor. That was massive all over Europe. We kind of got in touch with them, and people were just asking for more of this stuff. So the idea of kind of having tempo mapped rhythms and accompaniments, because it's got a vibe, it's just got this vibe about it.
Oh, so that's one of the
so Martin
features.
and he sent me the rhythms through, and he sent me all the tapes through. We did tons of work. And then he said, right, here's the Chamberlain stuff. And that was stunning, because when Harry recorded his stuff, it was in proper US spec studios with U47s. So where the Mellotron recordings were quite gnarly, the Chamberlains have got a much bigger bandwidth. And they just, again, it was like, whoa, these are amazing. And I had this moment where I'd kind of chopped everything up with the various stations. And I suddenly thought it'd be really interesting to see if they follow the same kind of chord finder, because all of the rhythms and stuff, the keys correspond to different chords within an overall key signature. And it was utter cacophony. And then I spoke to Martin, and I was like, man, that means we've kind of got to readdress all of this. And he said, just move everything up a note, because the bottom G on the Mellotron was always an end motif or some kind of musical motif on the Mark I. Whereas on the Chamberlain, it was silent. There was nothing on it. And I literally moved everything up one note, and everything followed. And what we realized from that was that once I mocked it up in M-Tron Pro originally. So I put a rhythm on the left channel and panned it left, a Mellotron rhythm, and then I put a Chamberlain rhythm on the right from the same station, and they're the same. And it was so amazing, because what we realized was essentially what the Eric Robinson Orchestra did. Eric basically just transcribed pretty much everything that had been in the Chamberlain and got a UK orchestra. And when you pan these things apart, they take on this enormity. It's just mind-blowing.
It's like stereo orchestra, like, multi-tracking orchestras. Fascinating.
It's stunning. you can do that with the accompaniments, with the rhythms. And then, of course, what happened with the Mark II. So it was really designed as the ultimate home entertainment console. But then what happened was obviously the Beatles used it on Strawberry Fields, and then the Rolling Stones got it, and the Moody Blues got it, and King Crimson got it, and Genesis got it. So it kind of transformed from this ultimate, very expensive home entertainment console to this kind of iconic prog massive instrument. And that's where Watcher of the Skies comes from, and Nights in White Satin. Mike Pinder was the real master at this. It was a ton of work, and we put it out yesterday. And I have to say, we got this quote from Tony Visconti just saying it's the perfect mellotron, and Mitchell Froome actually, who said out of all the instruments he's bought in the last 30 years, there's two that have inspired him, and this is one of them. And I just looked at the quotes from them, and I was like, the teenage me would never, ever have thought, when you're 50-something, they're going to be singing the praises of something you worked on. So, yeah, astonishing, really.
Nice one. I mean, a lot of people use Trons in media composition, and because of the sort of pre-made vibes. Have you been tempted to use any of that kind of stuff in yours as well?
I love Mellotrons.
Totally. Sorry, Tori.
Not me. I don't know. Sorry. I was going to say, I love Mellotrons. My studio neighbor has one of the smaller desktop ones, and I think this plugin is something that I would absolutely use. Obviously a plugin, it's easier to recall. You mentioned how these are so difficult to find. Obviously, I probably wouldn't be able to get my hands on a real one. The price point looks excellent. I feel like last time we were saying is about a year ago that I was on here, and Dave was launching another product at that point. So I was meant to be on here to, he's always releasing stuff that I seem to like. So it's a kismet, as they say.
There's an amazing producer in the US called Dave Tozer, and he does all the John Legend stuff, and he's phenomenal. And he's always been using these little kind of snippets of what we've done in a load of kind of really nice R&B stuff, I guess it is. And for me, that's where the magic of this is where you inject this very old kind of retro vibe into something contemporary, and it just gives it. Lee Groves, as you know, Nick, was Spike Stent's kind of right hand man for ages, and Lee helped us a lot. And there was this moment where Lee said, take a rhythm and accompaniment, pan them either side, so we got this dual layer ability on it, pan them either side, stick a ton of reverb on it, put the host sync on, and slow it down to 10 BPM. And he said, don't tell anyone about this because I'm going to use it on the next film score. And we did it, and it was like, whoa. So, yeah, there's all of that stuff. I could rant about this for days.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to do something a bit more in depth with that. Yoad, it's interesting, isn't it? The thing about those, they're so iconic, the sounds of that stuff on tape. I remember there was a Monty Python sketch ages ago, which was where they were going on about the sound of stuff. It's also woody, isn't it? No, that's tinny, that's woody. And the Mellotron has a woody sound, I think would be fair to say, right?
Absolutely. And I think that I use Mellotron strings a lot. And whenever you want like sampled strings to sound real, whatever it is, Contact or fancy libraries that you use, you stick a Mellotron together with it, and it makes it sound real. Because there's something about the Mellotron that is just, it speaks, it talks, it has a personality, and nothing else sounds like it. And I haven't tried the M-Tron Mark II. I'm sure it's amazing because last year Dave released the OBE, which is by far the best modeled synth ever, and still is. I mean, whenever I use it, and I use it a lot, it's just amazing. And I'm sure that the M-Tron Mark II has the same qualities, because I know that you, Dave, go to detail and spend hours and years in this case to make it perfect. And I can't wait to try.
Thank you.
Super.
Somebody said it's not a gift, it's a curse.
Well, sometimes that can be the case. I should probably interject here. We have a message from our other sponsor, who is iZotope. We're going to tell you about their subscription program, and of course, the ever appreciated Prince Charles Alexander.
iZotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive, inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
Indeed you can, and if you head to iZotope.com and you check the website, iZotope.com/Sonictalk, there's also a little discount code, which Sonic 10, if you enter that on any of your checkouts, apart from subscriptions and hardware, you could save yourself an extra 10%. We thank them very much for their continued sponsorship of the show. So I was wondering where to go next with this, and I think we can't really avoid this. This hopefully is going to be something big. This is from Blue Cat Audio.
Connector is an audio and MIDI streaming plugin from Blue Cat Audio that's used to transmit audio or MIDI in real time between several computers or between multiple applications on one computer, or you can create your own routings within a single application, all with minimal latency.
Right, again, I'm not going to play the whole thing. This is quite an interesting concept. It's been there's this sort of holy grail to a degree, this way to route audio or MIDI in a kind of joined up way, and Blue Cat Audio Connector seems to be the latest incarnation of this. So you could do it over inter-application, so it just works internally. You could do it over the network, local network. You can also do it in between apps on the same computer. You can also do it over the WAN as well, wide area network. Haven't tested that, but I know Rich Hilton was very interested in this. I don't know how much latency is. I think the compensation, because it's an all-together system, the compensation is built in to the system, so it auto adjusts itself, which I think is kind of probably the big key for this. It's like $49, $39 I think it's reduced to at the moment. It's got to be worth a try. I know, Yoad, we've struggled with how do we, when we've done our remote things, you send me your cameras and then you share your screen, and we use Listen To, which is great. But the idea of having the MIDI side of it as well, this looks like quite an interesting piece of technology, and I'm sure it's something you've probably got your eye on as well. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the fact that it integrates both or incorporates both audio and MIDI at the same time, and like you said, it can handle the latency compensation, the delay compensation for the latency is great, because you can use, if you use Macs, you can use IAC to network MIDI, and I've actually tried that one time. I was in Tel Aviv and I was operating the studio here and playing MIDI while listening back all through the AU audio network from within Logic, and playing a Minimoog which was connected to the Nevo, and playing MIDI and hearing it back, and it took about probably a second or something like that. Right. But the fact that the audio AU network, I think it's called Send and Receive, is a plugin, so it's compensated, but the IAC is not a plugin. It's an app or a driver, so they don't compensate. It doesn't get compensated. So you have a discrepancy between the two streams. And when you have both MIDI and audio in the same plugin, they can both get compensated and retain, the original timing. Although it will have latency, you won't be able to play real time together with someone else, but your relative timing will be maintained. So, and obviously the interconnectivity between applications like we have on iPads and stuff, it's strange that it feels like. Yeah, it's strange that the OS has it on iPads, but not on the professional platform, which is the Mac OS. So we have to use a third party product for that, but it's still very a welcome kind of addition to the stuff we can do. Obviously, here I have different computers in different rooms and different setups, and I don't have enough space here for all my analog gear, for instance, so some of it is in the machine room. So with something like that, I'll be able to operate it using kind of a remote computer with SoundGrid. I would use SoundGrid for the audio, but for the MIDI, you can use something like that. IAC is pretty good when you use it locally, but there are definitely benefits of in having it as a plugin within your DAW. Absolutely,
definitely.
So, great.
I know, Tori. I mean, I think given the times we're in, this is the sort of technology that could really sort of help people such as yourself, whereas you might want to use a session person on your... I mean, there are ways to do this. I mean, it's not the only way, admittedly, but there are so many ways that this could be used to route things. Have you kind of... have you thought of any?
Yeah, so similar to what Yoad was saying, I have multiple machines. So I have this machine here. My husband and I are both composers, so there's the machine that his studio, and then we have a home rig that's basically like a clone of our machines are essentially 3 clones of each other with slight variations. So we're constantly logging in remotely to each other's machines. We're doing remote sessions a lot, whether it's working with people in London or myself as a producer outside of film. Anytime I'm doing a collab, it's usually with somebody that's not physically in the room with me, especially now. So there's definitely things about this that are interesting, but the number one question is, how is the latency? Because that's always the issue, is dealing with latency. I mean, I've been mixing my EP remotely with somebody, and they use a program, and I can't remember the name. And it's pretty good, but there still is a slight bit of latency on my end to hearing his mixes. And I'm trying to, is this cross-platform? Because I feel like a lot of these programs
it's VST3 AU. I mean, I believe so. Let me see if I can find I think I've got the web page there. So what is it? It's available for...
It does. Yeah, it says Windows.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes a lot of these programs, especially in the smaller price range, they just don't work great on PCs. I'm not saying that's the case here. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But would you say it's like $40? I mean, it's definitely worth giving a try at that price point, and it could be a great addition. I'm just a little skeptical always of the latency until I try it.
Yeah, I think round trip latency is always going to be a thing. I mean, but I just think there's lots of interest because essentially this is also providing something along the same lines as Rewire, all of these other things. I mean, Dave, you were looking like you were kind of considering what this might be useful for, but I can imagine, multiple machines. I mean, there are other things like you might have, Logic running on one machine or Logic running on the same machine, and you want to use that Reverb plugin that's native to that into your, Reaper session or whatever it may be. There's so many different applications for this. I think it's one of those things that we're not going to quite figure out what it's for yet, but it just seems a standardization of piping that stuff between all these different sources has got to be good, right?
Which is funny because I was trying to figure out about a third of what Yoad was saying. This is like alchemy to me. Like, it clearly makes sense to two people here. To me, it's like magic. It's very surreal. I mean, I love the idea of being able to do stuff, from the main studio, from the comfort of my home studio. But that would entail me leaving a ton of analog gear on and watching the electricity meter just spin like a CD player.
Wait a minute. I've got a solution for you there. You can buy a smart plug that you can just basically... I did it here in the studio. I plugged a smart plug into my air conditioning unit, and I turned that when it was really, really hot last year, and it was almost impossible. When I left in the morning, I just switch it on. So by the time I got to work, the air conditioning had been on for 25 minutes.
I have to say that my entire studio is powered by such plugins, plugs. I have about 20 of them, and they're all here on the app, so I can power all the racks, all the synths, all the speakers. I can power everything from wherever I am. So that's not an issue either.
I guess what it doesn't always do is shut down things gracefully, which is what you might want to do. So, Dave, you might want to look into that, because I mean, I could see this working. You could do that, and then just go, oh, you know what? I need to test what. The only problem is obviously you can't physically control some of the old analog stuff, because that's not going to be where you might have CV onto a filter, you might not have it on some other parameter you might want to tweak. But yeah.
No, but there have definitely been times where I've kind of worked over at the main studio. Haven't saved something, left it on, come home, taken some stems from it or snippets of it, brought it back and thought, it doesn't sound right on this here. It'd be great if I could access that right now. But yeah, no, fascinating, really fascinating. I need to learn more about these things.
Well, I think this sort of, I've spoken about this before, this whole notion of sort of IP-based equipment, that if it's on a network somewhere, I mean, there are security issues and whatnot, but if it's on a network somewhere and it's got an API that you can control, then do it. Then it makes it easy to do. That's essentially how we're running this show right now. We haven't got any computers here that are running this video equipment. This is all happening in the middle, in a data center in Virginia, being controlled by MIDI and various other APIs. So those are the things. I don't know, Tori, do you have any kind of like audio networking going on in your place? Because I mean, I guess if you're linking two rooms, or are you just using straightforward copper?
So the only thing we're using right now is all of our machines are connected on a network, and there's a program called Splashtop. It's a very basic program that just allows us to log into any of the machines from the other ones and transfer files. You can also play back audio if you switch the outputs. I usually don't do that, but we can log in to all of the machines from the other ones. That's basically all I'm doing at the moment. Nothing too crazy. So
it's interesting because a lot of people, I mean, we've started to play with networked audio in terms of, like the stage boxes running on AES-50, so that this idea of using Cat5 to transport the stuff around. I mean, I imagine, because in a place like yours, Yoad, I mean, you've got miles of cables that are insanely weighty and expensive and have to be hidden in kind of special conduits, whereas if you just run sort of 6 or 7 Cat6 cables so you got redundant stuff. Yeah, Cat7. Okay, well, you're already way ahead of me.
Yeah, the entire studio is wired by Cat7 cables, because, like I said, I use SoundGrid to network all the audio gear here, and I can use it remotely. I've been working remotely for the past 10 years, so for me, the COVID thing wasn't really a big change. So I've been printing mixes through the desk, through the Nevo desk from home, and from other countries as well. So the Nevo was always on, and with the summing kind of setup, so I can load different mixes and just run it. So I could do the tweaks remotely and print an analog mix through the desk from another country. So I've been doing all that for years, and it's fun. It's fun, and it saves so much time, because a lot of times you have to to print stems, to export stems, and to print, vocal up and all that. And you don't have to sit in the studio and wait for it to just run, especially if it's analog and it's running real time. You can do it from other places, or there are a lot of benefits of doing that. And especially with SoundGrid, I can have noisy servers in other rooms, in the machine room, I have two floors here in the studio, so I can have the servers up there. And if I want to go in the kitchen and use a laptop just to change the vibe, like you said, I can use an Ethernet cable and I can run 64 outputs straight to the Nevo from the kitchen and things like that, So it's there's a lot of benefits for audio and MIDI networking, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of us have kind of have gradually sort of figured out that this definitely has a lot of potential. I know I've sort of been a proponent of cloud stuff for a long time, and I continue to do that. Like I say, this show is running on the cloud today, and it's just doesn't feel any different than what he would normally do, just because the computer's somewhere else. Okay, I think we're probably heading towards the end of our time. I'm sure you've got a lot of stuff to do. So, Tori, I don't know whether you're going to go and have a nap, or whether you've got work to do. Whether you're doing a load of promo for your upcoming project. So, have you got a morning of interviews and stuff to do now?
I have press all this morning, which worked out great because it gave me, I had to be up already and I needed to get in and be prepped. So this worked out great. But yeah, I got interviews all this week in the morning for the show, which comes out on Friday. So I hope everybody watches it.
What's it called again, and where can people see it?
It's In From the Cold. It is a spy thriller that's going to be on Netflix, dropping January 28th, which is this Friday. And the soundtrack comes out on all streaming platforms the same day. So I'm really excited.
Simultaneous release. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations and good luck with that. That sounds like it's going to be an exciting week. I guess you'll be glued to the stats. Are you a stats watcher? Because we don't get charts so much now, but do you get feedback from Netflix about, how popular it's gone, or do you have to get that fed back through the production company?
This is my first solo release with Netflix, so this is as new to me as it would be to anybody. I'm not going to be watching stats so much as looking at reviews. I'm going to try and not look at the internet too much. I'm a little anxious, but I think the show is great, so I'm not too worried. I'm just excited. Stuff got delayed so much because of the pandemic, and it's nice that this baby that we worked on for a year is finally, coming to fruition.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. I hope that goes well for you. And Yoad, I don't know what you're going on to next. I suppose you could just go and sit on a beach and remote desktop in, right? Assuming you could travel. There's obviously there's that.
Couldn't, but for some reason I choose to stay in grey, cold and miserable London. But I'm right here for the moment.
Excellent. Well, I hope you've got a fulsome day's work and fun creative stuff to do. And of course, Dave Spiers, GForce Software, you're probably sitting there looking at the stats. You've done a major release yesterday, and now everybody's sitting there going, there's a finger, because I know you will find it quite nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you finally release the stuff and it's out in the world. It's kind of like letting one of your children go.
It's the lead up to it. It's utterly, I was telling somebody about this the other day, it's utterly bizarre. I can stand up and talk in front of a load of people, I can play live in front of a load of people, but when it comes time that it's like, we're going to hit that button, I do get physically sick. I don't know what it is. I'd spend my life, if I could, just doing development and being very nerdy and geeky. I don't know. It's nice. It's great to put, to kind of put things out, but yeah, it never it's bizarre, isn't it? 'Cause it's like, I'm doing it for 22 years and it's never got any less scary. Crazy.
Oh wow, Well, good luck with all of that, and thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget, we've got there's a big release coming on Friday, so we've got a video for that, which I can't tell you about, but I can tell you it's coming. We've got the Triads review, if you want to check out that, which is a really interesting plugin. We've also got something coming up with Yuhi, where we talk to sound designers about some of the more interesting aspects and kind of more detailed aspects about how it is to create patches and how that all works. Anyway, but that's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I go to our little fours up, and we can all say goodbye and say goodbye. So that's it for this week. That was Sonic Talk episode 700. Won't you believe it? And thanks to Andy for doing the switch this week as well. We'll see you all next time. Take care. Bye bye now.